Now, from the Disney MGM studios in Florida, if we pick the winners.
Oh my goodness. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Oh, we're so happy to be here. Welcome to Cinemaholics. If we picked the winners, that's the Oscars winners of 2022. Will Ashton is here. I'm John Negroni. Will, we've done it. We made it another year of film. This is it, the big day.
Yeah, well, not the big day, right? Unless this is
I disagree. I think this is the one to beat. I mean, look at that red carpet under your feet.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Never get tired of seeing that.
Yeah, it's true. It's weird that it follows you around.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
A little freaky.
You know, I got to tell you, so we're doing if we picked the winners, we're going to go through the Oscar ballot and pick our, if we were the Academy and two people, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But here's the thing. Every year, I always, I don't know what your plans are for the Oscars this year. Every year, I usually sit down, get myself a little bit of, some red wine, maybe a cold brew, see what happens, watch the ceremony. I'm not going to watch it this year. I don't know if I told you that.
No, you did not. This is a bombshell announcement for me. Why are you not watching it?
Bigger bombshell than the movie Bombshell. Well, because it is my partner's birthday coming up. And so we have something special planned. And I was like, well, this is the Oscars' fault for delaying the ceremony to March 27th. That's not her actual birthday, so don't try to steal her identity. But you know what I mean? It's just sort of like, it's so late in the year. I'm very frustrated by that decision. I miss when it was like February, I hope it changes back.
I mean, I feel like this is traditionally when it is. Like the February one was an irregular time.
I don't remember the Oscars ever being in late March. No way.
Oh, really? No, I usually remember them being later in the year than earlier in the year.
Okay, let's fact check that. Okay, so Oscars 2020 date.
They usually bounce back and forth based on the availability of the location, right?
It depends. So it was February 9th in 2020.
Right.
In 2019, it was February 24th, a little bit later.
Mm-hmm.
That's still a month from what it is today.
Yeah.
2018, it was March 4th. That's still a month, basically. Mm-hmm. 2017, February 26th. So yeah, this is later, Will. I don't know what you're talking about.
It is a little bit later, but I mean, you did list it. Traditionally has been March, but I guess it's not usually this late into March.
But it's only been March one other month in the last 6 years.
But before that, I usually remember it being in March. If you want to go like way back, like going to the...
I don't know about way back, sure. I mean, I'm in 2015. I'm still seeing it's usually late February. Mm-hmm. I mean, to your point, it can be like early March, sure, depending on like where it lands. Yeah, 2014 was March 2nd.
Yeah.
But still, March 27th, that's pretty late. And, whatever. We can get used to it, I guess.
Sure.
But yeah, we're going to go through the categories. We're going to pick our winners and all of that good stuff, Will. But there are a few of these that I'm going to abstain from like last year just because I just didn't see them. I didn't see the animated short films or the animated live action.
Okay. I have seen all but 3 of the films nominated this year.
Okay.
The only
you're
ones
pretty equipped.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully, because we're recording this a few days before the actual Oscar ceremony. I'm hoping by the time the ceremony is happening, I can actually have seen all the films. That's been a goal of mine for quite a few years. And I got close last year. I think all but one of the films last year.
Incredibly close. Extremely loud and incredibly close.
But I've seen, like I said, I've seen all the shorts. The only features I haven't seen are Luana, A Yak in the Classroom, which is one of the international features. Mm-hmm. Writing with Fire, which is one of the documentary films, and Ascension, which is also one of the documentary films.
Yeah, so, the documentary one's going to be, tough.
Yeah, I might abstain from the documentary category. I feel like I won't abstain from the international feature category.
Yeah, I mean, we can always give our like, hey, this is what we hope wins and everything like that. Sure. But yeah, we can't be super fair, I guess. It's kind of funny too, because it's the first year that I'm doing this as a Critics' Choice voter. So like, I already did like, and HCA. So like, as Hollywood critics and Critics' Choice, I already did this stuff. So I'm doing it again. But I guess it's slightly different because the movies nominated are kind of different. So before we open it up, though, Will, we've already had our favorite films of 2022 or 2021, excuse me. We already talked about sort of the like our general like thoughts on the year in filmmaking. We've talked about our personal favorite films overall. So I do want to let the listeners know, if you're more interested in that kind of conversation, if you're like, well, I want you guys to go a little bit deeper on this, maybe, especially with the Best Picture nominees. That episode is still available. It is our top films of 2021 episode from a couple months back. Highly recommend. It's a good one, and I think that we definitely gave those films their due. But there are some films here that we've talked about on the show. Like we talked about like Tick, Tick, Boom. We talked about, The Power of the Dog, all of these films that, they weren't our personal favorites, but surely I think in this episode we can kind of maybe talk a little bit more about the industry in general and how they're sort of perceiving why are these the best films according to them, right? A lot of it has to do with the festival circuit. A lot of it has to do with marketing and things like that are, not artistically, sound, I suppose. But there's always a fun science to this, I like to say.
Sure. Are you implying that there's a politics to how awards get picked and nominated?
There's a little bit of corruption. There's a little bit of hustle, right?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I do think, generally speaking, that more good movies than bad get nominated for Best Picture and for the Oscars
Agreed.
in general. But I mean, yeah, there are always a few movies where it's like, why was this even nominated, let alone why is this movie winning? It's, I feel like most of the time it's rare for the Best Picture winner to actually, I think, reflect the best film of the year. I think the last time people felt that way was maybe Parasite.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That was a resounding. I mean, people really like Nomadland.
Sure. I mean, I like that a lot. I mean, I'm not talking personal picks. I'm just talking like from a cultural standpoint.
Sure, but I think that Nomadland certainly, like, I don't remember it being an upset that it won, right?
I don't know. I feel like a lot of people now are kind of like poo-pooing it because they're like, yeah.
I feel like your timeline is a little bit negative, though.
I don't know. I mean, I really like Nomadland, but I feel like a lot of people act like that movie doesn't exist and like it was an asterisk year and that movie doesn't really count as a Best Picture winner and all this stuff. And
that's pretty bizarre.
I'm seeing that. Yeah.
I mean, I sure it wasn't my favorite of what got picked. I would have liked Judas and the Black Messiah to win, but
sure.
Yeah, it's one of those things. We got to always preface this kind of episode with the fact that it doesn't really matter. Mm-hmm. In terms of like, I should say it does matter a little bit because these Oscar wins do affect the industry. They affect what kinds of movies get made. They affect, what movies get like an Oscar push so they go to theaters, so they can have more of a cultural awareness. So in that sense, it does matter, sure. But in terms of like, at this point where it's already been nominated, I think just the nomination is already a boost. It's already a huge success for some of these films that got nominated just to be nominated. I want to put that out there. But on the other hand, I do think that like one film winning over another, I mean, does it really matter? It doesn't impact the cultural legacy nearly as much as people think. I saw somebody, you sent me that, like the whole Raging Bull versus Ordinary People thing. Yeah. It's like, we remember Raging Bull, even though it didn't win, Best Picture.
Or Goodfellas over Dance with Wolves.
Yeah.
Another animal one.
There you go. I mean, Citizen Kane didn't win over the Greener Valley. I forget the name of that movie.
How Green is a Valley, I think it's called.
Yeah, that one. Which, it's sometimes you have a Singing in the Rain situation. Other times you don't. And it really isn't that hugely important.
Yeah. I mean, I think more recently, two of the most famous examples was Shakespeare in Love winning over Saving Private Ryan and Crash winning over Brokeback Mountain.
Green Book winning over Roma, and
sure,
it happens. It happens. Sometimes you have Moonlight and Parasite. If it ends in "ite," it's out of sight. Yeah. Actually, no, it's in sight because it won.
Yeah, I think Moonlight, though, you're right. That was another example. I think people overlooked that one because of the whole kerfuffle with the announcement of it. But that
did win.
Yeah, it won. I think most people would agree that was a deserving win. So I think people overlooked that one unfairly. But,
yeah, and it was funny too because I remember like we both really liked La La Land. It wasn't even one of those. It wasn't like a La La Land for at least us two was like some kind of sort of. There's always an Oscars villain, right? And we're going to talk about what the Oscar villain is this year, I guess. But in that sense, it was like, oh, these are two really great movies. And so I think that was despite the kerfuffle, it was a little bit of like, man, good movies coming out, competing each other in good spirit, good sport, and. It's a fun sort of horse race for us movie fans. A little bit of our little extra Super Bowl or our sole Super Bowl if we're only into that sort of thing. So
but I don't know. I feel like look back in like 2015, like probably in retrospect it should have been Mad Max. That seems like the one that has had the biggest cultural legacy.
I would agree with that. Yeah,
or like
for sure.
2017, it would have to probably be like either Get Out or Phantom Thread or even Lady Bird. I feel like that would probably be like the considered deserving win, or, you know, like even like you said, 2018, would it be Black Panther? I don't know. That's a curious, maybe The Favorite. I don't know.
I think
like
The Favorite was my favorite of those nominees. It wasn't the strongest year, but that's
right. Fine. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Birdman year, would it be either Grand Budapest or Whiplash? I don't know.
I would say Whiplash, but again, that was another really good. That was a good year. I know there were some people who were like, "Well, Gone Girl's like, no, be quiet. Let's just no."
Yeah.
Okay. We should get started here.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. We could do that all day. Going like,
we could.
What should have went over what did win? Yeah, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, that could be an episode unto itself. Probably not as interesting, but who knows?
All right. It's based on opinions, really. So yeah.
Let's be like the Academy and start with the acting categories, or at least two of them. Let's start with the supporting roles. I think that's always a fun one to start. They usually start with either actor in a supporting role or actress in a supporting role. Let's start with actress. So for actress in a supporting role, I think this is a pretty strong category. I think that people have their favorites for this one. But let's go through it. We have Jessie Buckley for The Lost Daughter. We have Ariana DeBose, West Side Story. Judi Dench for Belfast. Kirsten Dunst for The Power of the Dog. And Ingenue Ellis for King Richard. This is a tough one for me because like my heart and my mind honestly says Ingenue Ellis for King Richard. It's my favorite performance of these. But what do you think, Will? What's your pick? Who do you pick as the winner?
Yeah, I don't know. I think I'm between that one and DeBose for West Side Story. Just in terms of like what's like the most standout supporting performance, like that.
Same.
Ingenue Ellis, like I feel like her scene in the kitchen with Will Smith. Like I think it's fair to say at this point, unless there's like a major upset during the awards show this upcoming Sunday, that Will Smith is probably going to win. And I don't know. I mean,
pretty likely.
I don't know. We can talk more about how we feel about his performance in a bit, but I feel like that's such a like he is like taking over the film. Like this is a showcase for him. This is like a performance that's like for him. And then that whole scene, I think she arguably takes the movie right from him in that moment. And really just like, you know, she's a proven actress, obviously, and has proven herself time and time again. But that's a performance where it's just like, this is my movie now. And I'm, you know, I think it's probably a standout scene in the film. But yeah, I mean, just thinking about like the American number in West Side Story and how like that, you know, I mean, it's a tough performance or a tough role. I mean, because you're going off of Rita Moreno, who's, you know, giving, you know, an Oscar winning performance in the original. That's, you know, one of the most iconic musical performances of all time. Not only does she stand out on her own, but she gives even more pathos that performance and makes it singular in her own way while not discrediting what Rita Moreno did in that original film. So I don't know. I might give it to DeBose for this one, but I'm torn.
Well, we have to pick, and I'm dealing with the same thing. I mean, no disrespect to Jessie Buckley. I mean, it's bizarre to me that I'm not picking Jessie Buckley for something in general because she's one of my favorite young actors working today. But this is not the rule.
I mean, I thought she should have been nominated for last year for I'm thinking of Ending Things.
I think that's an even better performance. And I think that her performance in Lost Daughter is good, but Judi Dench in Belfast, a lovely performance, not the best. Kirsten Dunst in Power of the Dog. I think that's just like sort of a, you know, might as well kind of situation. I love all of these actresses, but yeah.
Right. I mean, I love Kirsten Dunst. If she got the Oscar, I'd be tremendously happy. I don't think it's her best performance, but I think she's very good. And I want to rewatch Power of the Dog, though. I feel like I've heard when you rewatch it for a second time, it really comes into place. So I feel like my opinion on these performances from her, at least, might change. But at the moment, talking right now, I feel like DeBose is probably my pick.
I think, that's the probably. DeBose, I think, has the momentum. And for me, I'm a bit torn because I really like that performance. The only issue that I have, and it's not DeBose, I just think it's like, I don't know, something, again, maybe I need to rewatch West Side Story. I do think that like the whole idea that like she's sort of doing the Rita Moreno thing, inheriting the crown. There's that whole narrative behind it. I think that she's a young actress. I think she has a super bright career, but I'm going to give it to Ingenue Ellis. I just think that is the performance that sort of like catapulted the movie more. With Ariana DeBose, you can argue that she carries the movie with Mike Faced, like really does. Like I think those are the two actors who are killing it the most. You know, even over Rachel Zegler. But yeah, I'm gonna give it to Ingenue Ellis, but by a hair. It's like such a thin margin. What about you?
I thought I said I would pick DeBose.
All right, so you picked a Bose. I pick New Ellis, and I guess that's that. So I guess I'm going to keep track of what we're picking here so that we know, right? I'll put like a little check for you because, check you out. And then I'll put like a little bit of a little slight dash for me. It's a little bit like here it is. Here you go. Okay. Let's do actor in a supporting role. Let's stay on the actors for another one, and then we'll get to the lead actors later. But for supporting, we have Ciarán Hinds for Belfast. I usually say Ciarán Hinds, and somebody scolded me about that. There's like, it's Ciarán Hinds. Okay, I got it. Ciarán Hinds for Belfast. Troy Kotsur for CODA. Jesse Plemons for The Power of the Dog. J.K. Simmons for Being the Ricardos. And Cody Smith-McPhee for The Power of the Dog. My feeling is that like a lot of people were saying it's going to be Ciarán Hinds, and then it sort of changed. It was like, actually no, Cody Smith-McPhee for The Power of the Dog. Now people are saying like, nope, still no, Troy Kotsur for CODA. So I think Jesse Plemons and J.K. Simmons are probably the like lowest on the likelihood meter. But if you had to pick, Will, like, who would you pick? I'm actually still a little torn on this one.
I'm between two performances. I'm between Troy. Is it Kotsur?
Kotsur.
Troy Kotsur for CODA and Jesse Plemons for Power of the Dog.
Interesting. Yeah, he's not accepting Plemons over McPhee. Okay.
I don't know. I mean, like I said, I'm hoping when I rewatch Power of the Dog that performance really clicks for me. I like it, but I think it's so subdued that I'm not quite like in love with it in the way some people are. I appreciate what it's doing, and I like it as a counterpoint to Benedict Cumberbatch, but I don't feel like it like really like hit me in the same way that it hit some people upon rewatching or watching that film. But Jesse Plemons, I mean, like he's been on a tremendous role for years now. I mean, going back either to Friday Night Lights or Breaking Bad, wherever people discovered him. And now he's had this career in both comedy and drama that's been outstanding. And even like in films like Jungle Cruise, where they're not that particularly good, like he stands out as a fun supporting part. And I think he really just gives a tremendous performance in Power of the Dog. I mean, if I were to pick it for him, it would not solely be for that performance, rather just like his decade in film and just being outstanding time and time again. But I could also say the same for, Troy. Is it Kotsur?
Kotsur.
Okay.
I just said.
Yeah, I would say. I mean that performance, obviously, like the emotional gravitas of that film. And I don't think CODA is an amazing film, but I think his performance is obviously quite good. And I think the best moments often are accredited to him. And he, I don't know when else he'd really get a chance to shine like this and get an Oscar. So I don't know. I mean, I might give it to Troy by a hair, but I that's only because I imagine Jesse Plemons has so many great performances ahead of him. All
right, so I'm going to put you down for Troy Kotsur. Now, for me, Will, this is tough because I want to give it to Ciarán Hinds, and I know that's to make you upset because, first of all, I love Ciarán Hinds, and it wouldn't.
Yeah,
it wouldn't just be a legacy thing. I actually think like of these performances, his work in Belfast, I just think it's just so good. Like
he's the highlight of the film, to be sure, but it's a very Oscar performance. Yeah, it's just a very like. I feel like I saw a Letterboxd review where someone was just like, as soon as he started dancing, it's like, oh, you know what's going to happen to him. you can see where that character is going to go. It's not going to end well. But I mean, yeah, he has a lovely scene 3/4 away through the film. That's I don't know if I'd give it an Oscar, but it's definitely the moment in the film I remember thinking the best upon. So
yeah. I like Troy Kotsur as well. I think that's a really good performance in CODA. The only thing with that, though, is that I just think, if I did pick Troy Kotsur, it would probably be because of what you're saying. It's like, it's not like the guy will ever get an Oscar again, unfortunately. I hope that would not be the case, but I can't say that it's my favorite of these performances, or I can't say that, of the supporting turns in the movie, I don't think that he has as much of an impact. He has like that scene, which I think is what they're pushing, which I don't think is that great of a scene. I think it's a good scene, and I certainly connected with it. Like being deaf will do that, but sure. I mean, I guess if I had to really believe into my heart of hearts, it's between Ciarán Hinds for me and Cody Smith-McPhee. No disrespect to Jesse Plemons. I just don't think that performance in Power of the Dog really landed with me as much. But I'm going to give it to Kieran Hines, I guess, because I think with Cody Smith McPhee, maybe I need to rewatch it as well. To me, it feels too much like a lead actor. I feel like he's too much of the protagonist to be like, well, he's the supporting role. And I get it. Like Benedict Cumberbatch is a tower of a performance in that movie, but Cody Smith McPhee holds his own so much that I see him more honestly as a co-lead than a supporting. So I'm going to give it to Kieran Hines, and happy too, because I think Kieran Hines has done such excellent work over the years.
All right.
And that's actor in a supporting role. Troy Kotzer and Kieran Hines. Two great performances. We can say that.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I don't know. I guess I just didn't really feel that strongly about the supporting actor category this year. Like there wasn't, and we didn't even talk about J.K. Simmons, who, was totally fine in that movie, but
it's whatever.
Yeah, it's just like whatever. Like, he already has an Oscar. He gave a great performance in Whiplash, and that was his Oscar-winning performance. But in this movie,
let's switch gears over to makeup and hairstyling. I kind of want to dance around a little bit with this, right?
One of the ones that won't be broadcast during the show, correct?
Correct, yeah, and we don't have to spend too much time on it for sure.
Sure.
We have Coming to America, we have Cruella, Dune, The Eyes of Tammy Faye, House of Gucci. This is a no-brainer for me. I give it straight to Dune, no questions asked. What about you, though?
This is for hair and makeup?
Yeah.
Yeah, read the nominees again for me.
Coming to America, Cruella, Dune, The Eyes of Tammy Faye, House of Gucci.
Yeah. I think I'm going to go with Dune as well. Just because I feel, as far as like being immersive into the film and really getting you into like the landscape of what it's portraying, I think Dune is the most effective. Though, I mean, even though I strongly dislike Coming to America, I feel like the hair and makeup in that film is quite outstanding. And even though I wasn't crazy about Cruella, I feel the same way. So, I mean, I don't think there's like a sore nomination a bunch. Even though some of the makeup in House of Gucci is a little goofy, it's strong work. Same with the Eyes of Tammy Faye.
I think the reason I lean toward Dune is because it's a bit more original and a bit more creative. I think with all of these other ones, they're all relying on previous things that exist. And they're doing a great work with it for sure. But I think with Dune, it's for like more characters. I think it's subtler what you see in Dune. And I think it builds, like you said, the immersion in the world. So I just think it's a cut above.
I mean, I hate to break it to you, but Dune's based on a very popular novel.
A novel, but we don't have like it's very different from the David Lynch movie.
Sure. And I know. But you said like you act like it's original, and it's like I don't know how to tell you this.
Well, I just mean like original bit. Yeah, you get what I mean.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So
not all these. There other are things, no.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there are no sandworms in the real world. If only. Though.
So you say.
Yeah.
But all right, I guess so. We're both picking Dune for makeup and hairstyling. Let's move on then to film editing. This is always an interesting one. It used to be. I think people sort of change their idea of like what film editing is. Sometimes people don't understand the difference between film editing and, a scene sort of like cutting to something else. Like there's a lot to film editing, I want to say, right? And so I want to get that off my chest first.
I would say, editing, probably one of the top 5 most important jobs of any film. Obviously, makes or breaks the film quite literally. And the fact that it got snubbed from the broadcast, the fact that any of these categories got taken off the broadcast is ridiculous, but this one most especially.
Yeah, this is an egregious miss, I think, because it is so important. I think one of the reasons is because a lot of people think that the director has so much power with film editing, which is not always the case. The film editors over film history have been certainly a profound like aspect of the history of cinema. But a lot of people, they buy into the narrative that like the director is like the editor in real time and stuff like that, which I think is bonkers. But
I mean, there are examples like with like Soderbergh and the Coens where they are their own editors, but that's not always the case, obviously. But
they lead it, and I think that like there are a lot of people involved in it too, for sure. It's a big enterprise, putting the film together in post-production. Now, for this purpose, we're going to go through these nominees. We're going to look at them, and this is an interesting one. We have Don't Look Up, we have Dune, King Richard, The Power of the Dog, and Tick, Tick, Boom. So I think like with Tick, Tick, Boom, it's because genuinely, I think that film has like some pretty elaborate like musical set pieces that require some tricky editing, especially with like the mix between effects and everything like that. The rest of these are not movies that I certainly was thinking a lot about the editing, which is fine because I think that that's a good thing. You shouldn't always be thinking about the editing while watching a movie. But what do you think? What is your winner, Will Ash, and who do you pick?
Yeah, this is a tough one because like you said, I feel like when I think back last year on the best edited films, I don't really necessarily think about these ones in particular. And that's sometimes, intentionally and sometimes not. Like you said, I think some of the best editing out there is because like you don't think about the editing process. You're just immersed in the film. But let's see. So it's Dune, Power of the Dog, King Richard, Tick, Tick, Boom, and Don't Look Up.
That's right.
All right. I'm probably going to give it the Power of the Dog because I feel like that movie is so intricately made and so intrinsically about the structure of the film, but it's in a fairly unorthodox manner and you have to kind of put it together yourself. That doesn't mean that the film itself is incompetently made. Like there's so much that's revealed in such subtle and nuanced ways, but doesn't disrupt the flow or the gifts that Jane Campion has as a storyteller. And I think that when I think back on how well crafted these movies are, I think that's the one that's probably the most subdued and the one that resonates the most. And that is due in part to the way that it's edited. So I'll give it to Power of the Dog.
This is a tough one for me too, because I think with Dune and Don't Look Up, I can't give it to either of those movies. I think that for their length, you feel it a little bit too much. And I always had an issue with Dune's editing in general. It's one of the things I did not like about the movie as much.
I didn't mind the editing in Dune. I wasn't crazy about the editing in Tick, Tick, Boom or in Don't Look Up. I felt it was a little...
I think Tick, Tick, Boom had pretty... I have to say, with Tick, Tick, Boom, I think that there are certain little like tricks and flights of fancy that are impressive, which is why I would almost consider it. But no, for me, it's actually between Power of the Dog and King Richard.
Okay. Yeah, I figured you would be in King Richard's camp. Considering I know you were very fond of the editing when we talked about the film back when we reviewed it. Yeah. So
the reason I'm giving it to King Richard, because I agree with everything you said about Power of the Dog. I think it's a very strongly, master-crafted film. I think with King Richard, that to me is a great example of what I certainly love the most about these sort of like 4-quadrant crowd pleaser movies. And that, first of all, the tennis I think is extremely well crafted, extremely well edited to make it look like these kids are the Williams sisters. That is an amazing feat, and the editing has a lot to do with it. I also just think the structure of the film and the way it's put together and just the way it's delivered, a lot of people are crediting solely like the performances, and because the performances are fantastic. But I also think a lot of it has to do with the direction here. I think it, the direction and the editing and just the way that the movie just moves so quickly. And it's not a super short film, but I felt like it just guided me along. It had a great engine. And so I'm giving it to King Richard. Not by a lot, though. I think Power of the Dog, probably technically better edited in certain respects, but I do think there is something to the fact that a lot of people weren't able to finish Power of the Dog. A lot of people were kind of not with it because they felt like it dragged a bit too much. And a lot of that has to do with people not loving slow burns. So I don't put it solely at Power of the Dog's feet. But certainly I have to give a little bit more. I have a little bit more respect for a movie like King Richard, which could have felt the same way, but did. So yeah. That's film editing.
I get where you're coming from. Yeah, I don't know if I fully agree, but I will say, I mean, even though I don't love King Richard, I think the editing is easily one of the strongest aspects of that film.
Since we're on editing, let's go to sound. We used to have sound editing, sound mixing, and all of that. They kind of simplified it, which I think is probably for the best, even though I think there is a huge difference between sound mixing and sound editing. We've talked about it over the years. Simplifying it down to one category is probably the better case scenario for people sort of rewarding these films, I suppose. But for sound, here are the nominees. We have Belfast, we have Dune, we have No Time to Die, The Power of the Dog, and West Side Story. This one is pretty easy for me. It's down to two of them, honestly. But yeah, I would give it to West Side Story. I think that the sound is what makes that film come alive for me. And so probably a pretty decent margin. I'm picking West Side Story. I really think Spielberg and his team just really nailed it with everything involving the set pieces, the way the music is incorporated into the environment, the way that he does the Spanish and English language and incorporates it into the story. I just think the sound design of this thing is just immaculate. And that's not to say anything lesser of the other films here. I think they all have, pretty decent, they're all pretty good about this sort of thing. Sure. But yeah, West Side Story for sure for me.
Yeah, I mean, I was down the two as well. And I'm curious to hear if it's the same two that you had. Obviously, West Side Story was one of the ones I was mulling about. But what was the second one for you?
The second one for me would have to be Dune. All right. Kind of the same reason for makeup and hairstyling. It's just like it's practically inventing new types of sounds or sort of reincorporating existing sounds to like create a world. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's where I think I'm actually going to give it to Dune, because I feel like, as well as I mean, obviously, West Side Story is a musical, and the music in it is grand, and it definitely rewards the theatrical experience in many wonderful ways. But Dune, like you said, like that's creating a whole world, not only through the look, but the sound, and just hearing all those like, you know, ominous big droning machines and the various rustles of this desert wasteland. It really captures, I feel like, this is own immaculately made little world. And I think obviously a lot of factors go into that, but the sound was so key, I felt, to making that experience really pop on the big screen. And so, yeah, I got to give it to Dune.
All right. I think that's super respectable. Obviously, I was considering it as well. So, you know, certainly we're of a mind in terms of the benefits and the contributions of both films there. All right, let's go to animated feature film. Let's do a tough one, because this one, I think my heart is so torn. I love all of these movies in some respects. I think that honestly, 4 of them are worthy of this prize. Only one of them I think is kind of out in the periphery. It's kind of the odd one out a little bit, but the other 4, I think each one, you can make such a strong case, such a strong argument to win this category. And the nominees are Encanto, Flea, Luca, The Mitchells versus the Machines, and Raya and the Last Dragon. I'll say Raya and the Last Dragon, fun movie. I certainly do not think it's up to snuff with the rest of these, but it's quite good. I think it's a good movie, but yeah, no, these other ones are much better in my opinion.
Yeah,
but this is tough. I mean, they're very different movies. You have a Pixar movie about coming of age. You have a sort of Netflix animated movie that is just like beautiful and zippy and fun. You have Flea, which is this hard hitting, beautiful documentary narrative, and then you have Encanto, which is just like this, you know, instant Disney animated classic. So, where do you land though, Will? I'm so curious.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't quite as taken by these films as you and many people are, but that's fine. I think Raya and the Last Dragon is the only one I'm like, that doesn't really deserve a nomination this year. I'm sorry. I would give that probably to Crypto Zoo.
Same here.
Or what were some of the other animated films that came out this past year?
Oh, there are a few I'd have to think. Yeah. It was a great year for animation. We've talked about it. Yeah. Wish Dragon. You're right. No, just kidding.
I thought there was something else that there was whatever.
Vivo. There you go.
Well, I mean, those are films that came out last year. Yeah, that were in the that would have been nominated for the anime category. But I think I'm gonna have to go with Luca.
Really?
Yeah, I feel like I'm between Luca and Flea, and I like Flea, and I feel like Flea is probably the more inventive presentation, and I feel sort of similar to Mitchell's vs. the Machine, which is not a film I love, but I think in terms of animation, it's probably some of the most inspired and some of the most appealing from a visual standpoint. But I don't know, I just feel like Luca, there's so much simple pleasures to be found in that film, and I think people underwrite that film because it is, especially by Pixar standards, such a
like
sort of
underestimate
minimalist.
it?
Yeah, like I think it's underrated. I mean, and that I feel like people, I mean, you know, I don't think it's like a top tier Pixar film, but I think it's better than a lot of people have given it credit, and I feel like it's because it's such a minor, low-key kind of film for them. But I think that resonates more with me with time. When I think back on these films, Luca's the one that impressed me the most, not only because the style of it feels a little bit more inventive for Pixar, like you said, it has kind of more of not only an Aardman feel, but has the influence of Italian neorealism and also Studio Ghibli. And it just feels like it has a little bit more patience and a little bit more subdued charm that I feel like some of the other Pixar films have gotten. It shows, I think, a new chapter for Pixar in a very exciting way. So I'm going to be boring and pick the Pixar film.
I mean, it's easy to be boring in a category like this, I think, or like what you pick, because each of these have their own sort of like, you know, aspect to them that movies like this get rewarded all the time. Sure. For me, I would immediately take out Encanto. Unfortunately, I really, really loved Encanto for its music and for its inventive world and its characters. I think it's a really lovely movie, but I do think for me, Flea, Luca, and The Mitchells vs. the Machines are just right above it, I think, in terms of quality for me. This is tough, though, because I think with Flea, it's an animated movie for adults, which I really appreciate, and I think the animation is really well done. It's really understated. It's really just, you know, there's something about it that like I can just easily grab onto, I suppose, and it's perfect. It's a perfect medium for telling this story, especially in the anonymous way that the person wants. I think I go to Luca, and what I really love about Luca is very similar to what you're saying. It was my favorite animated movie of the year next to Crypto Zoo, And I just think that it's just such a simple, wonderful little story. I think that I think of that movie, I'm in that place again, you know, and just the world building of it. I think it's a really, really good message. The allegory is really strong. But then I look at a movie like Mitchell's versus the Machines, which it has just like a little bit of everything done super well. It has the comedy, I think, more than any of these other films. I think it has a lot of heart. I think it has a lot of inventiveness and originality. Like I would say Luca and Encanto to an extent. I think why I'm leaning toward Mitchell's versus the Machines too is that it also is a bolder movie. Like it's able to just like, it has a gay character, whereas like, you know, these other films are just afraid of that sort of thing. And except for Flea, obviously. And I think that it has like the whole package, I suppose. And I also think the animation is just a little bit more inventive. It's Sony Pictures Animation. They're sort of taking that style from Spider-Man into the Spider-Verse and evolving it. And when I think about that movie, I think of the stunning animation. I think of its really good message and, you know, its boldness and its creativity. So yeah, even though it's between Luca and Mitchell's versus the Machines, I'm going to go Mitchell's, even though it's not my favorite movie of the bunch. I want it to be rewarded because I think that it deserves quite a lot of praise for being so good at so many different things. So I'm giving it to Mitchell's.
Well, I'm glad you feel that way.
I know, Will, you've not been the biggest fan of Mitchell's versus the Machines, which is quite all right.
I think it's fine. I think it's a lovely little movie. I don't know why people have gone through the roof with it, but I think it's nice for what it is.
It happens.
You didn't see any of the animated short films, right? I
did not.
Okay, I was gonna say, I'll try to be quick with this one because I feel like the animated short film category is way more interesting to me than the features. I don't know if you want to go over them or
we have Affairs of the Art, Beastia, Box Ballet, Robin, and the Windshield Wiper.
Yeah, all of these.
No Disney stuff.
No Disney stuff, no CG stuff at all.
Yeah,
it's
Burrow didn't make it here. Us Again didn't make it here, and I like both of those short films.
Actually, that's 100% true. Actually, Windshield Wiper I think is CG, but it's done in a sort of rotoscope style. Like it looks a little bit like it's very similar to how
Feast or Paperman.
Well, like that, and the mix with Spider-Verse.
Okay.
But that one is like, these are all very mature. Like this was credited as like an NC-17 category because of Beastia, which is a pretty harrowing short film. I think that one might actually be my pick, even though I'm between that one and Box Ballet. I think Beastia, just because of how it's able to use this animation style to really get us into the mind of a truly despicable person, a real life person who, without being too graphic, used her dog to like torture and abuse and sexually assault random people. It's a very disturbing short film, but it gets you into the mindset in a really effective and illuminating way. And the way that it uses the animation, I think, is so captivating. And I've been thinking about it so much since I've seen it. So I have to give it, I think, the Beastia. I don't think it's going to win. It's probably going to be Robin, which is another, triumph from Aardman Animation. I think they do a very nice job of establishing, their trademark style, but in a more, I guess, for lack of a better word, Disney fashion. Like it has a very like warm Christmas feel to it. It's Netflix, so they're probably going to put more firepower behind it. But yeah, I think Beastia is probably one of the most effective short films I've seen in quite a while. So I'm going to give it to that one.
All right, Beastia for short film animated. That is Will Ashton's pick. I, of course, have to abstain since I did not see any of these, but I'll probably get to them eventually.
I mean, I don't know if I can recommend Beastia, but I'd be very curious to hear what you think of it if you ever get around to watching it. Or any of these, honestly. I mean, like I said, I liked all of them.
Sure. All right, let's do costume design. So kind of similar to makeup, hair, and hairstyling in terms of the criteria involved in evaluating the film and how we go about it. So for the nominees here for costumes, we have Cruella, Cyrano, Dune, Nightmare Alley, and West Side Story. This is a tough one because I really think Spencer should be in here, alas. I think that for me, it's down to Cruella and Dune. I think that the costumes in both of those are more intricately tied to the story itself. They're very original. I think that Dune in particular, I think is where I kind of have to go because I just think it's like an iconic design. It obviously is borrowing from the novel and like how the novel sort of describes this world and everything like that. But I think Dune is certainly punching way above its weight in that respect. I mean, the costumes literally in this movie are intricate to the world building and how you're sucked into the story and how the characters move along through the film. They represent the characters and who they are. They tell so much of the characterization. So yeah, for me, it's Dune quite easily. Not to say I like the costumes in Cruella for sure. This would be much tougher if Spencer was in the running. But what about you, Will? What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think I'm kind of between 2 or 3 of these. It might be surprised which ones. I certainly think Dune is up there for me. I think Cruella is also a pretty easy pick. In a way, I know I wasn't the biggest fan or even a fan at all of Cruella, but I think the costuming is pretty undeniable and so crucial to that film, whatever success that it has had. The only one I think the costuming in Nightmare Alley is a little bit better than people are going to give it credit, especially in terms of capturing that look and feel. Yeah, I mean, I feel like the only two, Cyrano, I think the costume's fine. Like, I don't really think about that much. And I don't feel like West Side Story, the costuming is what I walk away thinking about other than the American number. Like, I don't think the costuming really stands out beyond that sequence for me, though maybe I'm just forgetting something. But I don't know. I mean, I might just give it to Cruella just because when I think back on like the year in costuming, I feel like that movie is where it stands out the most. It's so whatever charms I've had with that film and the few they may be, I feel like they all are due to the costuming and how much those costumes pop, especially during that montage scene in the middle. I don't know.
I'm genuinely shocked. I'm going to
give it to Cruella, even though a film, like I said, I don't like the film, but the costuming, got to give credit where it's due.
Okay, fair enough. All right, so you're picking Cruella. I picked Dune. I thought that one was going to be a Dune, sync up, but I guess not. All right.
I mean, I gave Dune 2 the theoretical Oscars already at this point. So
that's true. Over Cruella. It is funny though, because so far we've only overlapped on one category so far. I think we're about halfway through, right? So it's a little interesting that we're kind of, we usually vary, but let's see if that continues. But let's go to music, original score. There are 2 music categories. We're going to start with original score here. The nominees include Don't Look Up, Dune, Encanto, Parallel Mothers, and The Power of the Dog. Little surprised that CODA didn't show up here, but I like the Parallel Mothers did. Very good score. And this one I'm a little bit more of a struggle with because I liked a lot of scores this year. Only one of these I thought was really good, and that's The Power of the Dog, honestly, that I think is like next level good. Maybe because I have that soft spot for Johnny Greenwood. I don't know. But I give it to Power of the Dog. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I feel like the best score of the year was probably a different Johnny Greenwood score, and it was Spencer.
Yeah. Where is Licorice Pizza?
Or even Licorice, yeah, but I feel like the score for Spencer is so much more intricately accomplished than people either remember or give it credit. And so I am tempted to give it to Johnny Greenwood just as like an honorary thing. And also because I think, I'm the huge Radiohead guy and I love Johnny Greenwood, but I don't know if that's like, I mean, I like the score of Power of the Dog. I don't feel like that's the greatest thing about the movie though.
Same.
And I don't know. I feel like, I mean, I don't like Don't Look Up at all, but I think the score for that is pretty good. I don't know if I'd give it an Oscar.
I don't even remember the score very well.
Oh, really?
I remember Dune much better. For me, Dune would be the next runner-up.
I don't really remember the score for Parallel Mothers that well. That's the one I'm having trouble.
I vaguely do. Yeah.
Encanto, I remember. I remember the music more than I remember the score. So I think I'm going to have to give it to Dune, which I remember that score quite vividly. It can be a little monotonous at times, but I feel like when it's effective and it really hits, it hits. And it's like it adds that, like I said, that immersiveness, that grandness of it. And it's just Hans Zimmer firing all cylinders. So got to give it to Hans, man. Gonna give it to
I think
Dune.
That's pretty fair. And I think the only reason for me that I move a little bit away from Dune is because it's Zimmer. I think it sounds a little bit too similar to other things he's done before. As big of a fan of him as I am, I think I just give it to Power of the Dog. I think it's a slightly more original what he's doing there, even if it's not as like hummable and as like instantly like, oh, I remember every beat of it. Sure.
I mean, that would probably be my second pick if it wasn't for Dune.
Before we do music score, let's go to visual effects. Let's slide over to that. We haven't done cinematography yet, so I want to start with visual effects because very different, right? With visual effects, we have an interesting couple nominees here. We have Dune.
Yeah.
We have Free Guy. You were going to say?
No, go ahead. I'll save it till after.
Okay. Dune, Free Guy, No Time to Die, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, and Spider-Man No Way Home. I think this is a pretty garbage sort of selection here.
So 3 of these nominations are embarrassing.
Right, I would say.
And 1 is passable and 1 is great. So it's pretty easy to pick which one.
It's Dune. I mean,
yeah, it's Dune.
I'm going to assume the passable one is No Time to Die.
Yeah, because it's a lot of practical effects. I think they're pretty good. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like I said, not like Oscar worthy, but that's like the one where it's like, okay, at least I can understand. Like Spider-Man looks like hot garbage. Shang-Chi doesn't look great. And Free Guy, you know, it's meant to look like a computer world. So I guess great jobs. Kudos to that. But yeah, not an Oscar worthy. And there were so many other movies that were more deserving of this.
That's where I am, because I don't dislike those movies nearly as much as you do. I don't think Spider-Man or Shang-Chi look terrible. Right. I think they have moments where they actually look pretty good, but certainly not like among the best of the year. Far from it.
I thought Shang-Chi was all right, but I mean, yeah, I wouldn't give it a special effects or any Oscar for that matter.
I'm gonna have to, agree there. I think it's getting it for the bus sequence, and I don't know what's going on there with Spider-Man. I really don't. The visual effects are okay. I just don't. That is not one of the things about that movie that I think was effective.
That's one where they nominate the quantity of it over the quality, I think.
Perhaps, yeah. All right, well, that's visual effects. Let's go back to music, but with the original song. Now, I've only listened to each of these once. And I gotta be honest, this is easy for me to pick because there's only 2 of these that I think are bops. Like, yeah, this is it. This is the song. And I don't even know who's going to win here. Like, I could see it be almost any of these, except for the 4 Good Days thing, the Somehow You Do. I cannot believe that movie even came out. Like, I got like marketing materials for it. Yeah. You watched it?
I watched it because I'm trying to get through all these nominees.
That's the thing is like, there's like nobody. I don't think I know anybody who saw it, or like if they saw it, they didn't say anything. They were quiet about it. I got like the sheet music for this in the mail, and I was like, "What is this movie?" This was back in like November, and I was like, "I guess this is coming out in December or something." Well, and I never heard about it again.
This actually came out in April. This was actually, I think, before that though. Like,
see, that's the thing. I hadn't even heard of it.
I think it premiered at the 2020 Sundance Film Festival. It came out like the same weekend as Army of the Dead, whatever that was.
Oh, I think you're right. I do vaguely remember.
Yeah, I got a decent release, but not like a ton of press.
We certainly didn't talk about it.
Yeah, right. We didn't see it. I saw it to catch up on nominees. This song, I mean, it's the Diane Warren. For some reason, Diane Warren has a lot of fans at the Academy, and she gets nominated. She's like 15 nominations, and I don't know if like 3 of those songs are even memorable, but she just has a lot of friends over there, and I mean, good for her. But yeah, that's a ridiculous nomination, and I don't really remember the King Richard song that well either.
I don't either. Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those like I played over the credits probably, and the Down to Joy for Belfast I thought was okay, but for me it's between Dos Oruguitas for Encanto and No Time to Die for No Time to Die. Those to me are the 2 best. I give it to Dos Oruguitas because I listened to that song last night. It stuck with me. I think that it's beautifully arranged, wonderful song. I think it like lifts up that entire third act. I think it kind of like amplifies the movie quite a bit actually for me, because it sort of takes an aspect of like the backstory in that movie and infuses it with like much needed empathy and humanity that the movie had sort of been missing, honestly, because it got so up in its own magic. So yeah, Dos Oruguitas, beautiful song. The Spanish version particularly is quite good. No Time to Die I thought was good too, but and it's a James Bond song. It's a little bit of like, we know what we're getting at that point, but yeah, what do you pick?
I think this is a pretty weak category. Is this for the Encanto song? Is that the climactic song?
Yeah, it's the one that's playing over the flashback.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good song, but like most of the songs in that movie, like they're well accomplished and they're well composed, but I just don't really remember them that well. I mean, I remember We Don't Talk About Bruno now because I hear that on the radio all the time, but I feel like other than My Family Madrigal, I feel like most of the songs don't really stick with me in that film. And I imagine that's what's going to win, but I'm going to probably give it to Billie Eilish. for No Time to Die, which I think is not only a more memorable song, but I think it sets the mood and the tone of that film quite well.
It does. It does.
Yeah. And I think it's a good song. So, I mean, I don't know. And I think in a better year for this category, I don't think I would have picked it, but of the nominees, that's one I'd probably pick.
I hear you on that. I'm going to wonder if like the music that they did for she and her brother did for Turning Red, I wonder if it's going to pop up next year. Kind of in a similar fashion.
Sure. I was thinking about how I might be a little biased towards the song because we saw it being made in that Apple TV documentary.
Oh yeah, that's true.
So we got to see it being made, so it'd be kind of cool. Yeah, so it'd be kind of cool if it won. I don't think it will, but if you got to see how a song was made, and then it's like a little get back.
All right, little get back. All right,
yeah. You get to see how a famous song is made.
Let's go over to the live action short film category. This is another one where I didn't see the nominees, so I'm abstaining from this one. But are you able to do this one well?
Oh, I'm sorry. Which one? Which category?
Live action short film?
Yeah, I've seen all the short films.
Yeah. So we have A La Cashew, Take and Run, The Dress, The Long Goodbye, On My Mind, and Please Hold. I've heard plenty about The Dress and The Long Goodbye. I haven't really heard about the other ones as much, but take it away.
Yeah, I mean, well, what have you heard about The Dress and The Long Goodbye?
Just that they're front runners, or that like people want them to win at the very least.
Yeah, the classic history with this category is whatever is the weakest one will win. And so the weakest one is The Long Goodbye, which actually isn't even that bad of a short. It's pretty good, which is, I think the last 3 years, whatever short films have won were hot garbage, and they like Skin.
Yeah.
And that Apartment one. And then,
but to be fair, I remember the ones that I watched in addition to those weren't that great either. So,
right. But I think The Long Goodbye, it's with the Riz Ahmed. He co-wrote and starred in the film. It's pretty good. It's a good performance from him, but it's part of an album that he made, and so it has a very music video feel to it. It relies on like shock value to get its point across, which is effective, but doesn't really have a lot of nuance to it in a way that I feel like the other short films are a lot more effective about communicating, very heavy stuff in a way that feels a little bit more rounded in some sort of character and realism. And just I feel like that short film is fine. I think it's effective and punchy, but I just feel like it's not as good as some of the other ones here, which, not an amazing category, but I think a strong category. I think all the other ones are pretty good. I'm torn between The Dress and Please Hold. The Dress I really like because it just gives us a perspective we haven't really seen. It's about a dwarf custodian who is trying to explore her own sexuality, and it's so tender and oddly kind of moving and bittersweet, and it gives a perspective, like I said, that I feel like we haven't really seen. Please Hold, it really tackles the crisis with the immigration and the police system and with just the prison system in general in a futuristic and inspired way. It's lighthearted, but doesn't take the matter too lighthearted. It's, I think, a very well done and also visually pretty impressive short film. And also, like On My Mind and Take and Run, I think are good too. So, I don't know. I might give it to Please Hold, just because I think it's not only more inventive, but I think it also gets its point across in a really effective way. But I don't know. I'm if you ask me tomorrow, I might say The Dress. So I don't know. Back and forth in those two. But for today, I'm going to say Please Hold.
All right. So Please Hold for short film live action. Let's move on to documentary. So for documentary feature, so there is a short subject documentary, which we'll get to. But let's do the feature. And this is another tough one because I've only seen two of these. There is Ascension, Attica, Flee, Summer of Soul, and Riding with Fire. Now, for me, it's between Flee and Summer of Soul because those are the two that I saw. I thought there were a lot of really great documentaries and everything, but they were two of my favorite documentaries of the whole year. I think for me, though, I kind of I want to give it to Summer of Soul because that was an experience watching that movie. I've seen it twice, and I just think that it's like Questlove just did a beautiful job with that, and I really want to reward the film quite a bit for just bringing a moment of history to so many people who didn't know about like this whole thing, and also for the people who did know about it. Sort of, I just think it's a beautiful thing when a movie can bring you back to a memory and sort of confirm for you like this happened, like this absolutely happened. So for me, it's Summer of Soul. But what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's any documentary here that's quite as good as Collective from last year. But like I said, I haven't seen Writing with Fire, nor have I seen Ascension. But of the three I have seen, I think it's pretty easily Summer of Soul. Even though I do, like I said, I like Flea, and I think Attica is pretty good as well. I think, as you said, Summer of Soul not only works as a really entertaining piece of documentary filmmaking, but it's also just important as a historical text. It feels enriched knowing that it feels like some lost part of history is coming alive and you're seeing it unfold right in front of you. And yeah, I just think on all cylinders, it's really an effective, moving documentary. So yeah, like I said, unless I really find myself taken by Writing with Fire or Ascension when I watch them, I think for now I'm going to have to say Summer of Soul is my pick.
All right. So this is only the third time that we both have agreed. And it's the first time we've agreed on something that isn't Dune. So we both gave makeup and hairstyling and visual effects to Dune. In this case, we give it both to Summer of Soul for documentary feature. Interesting. But let's move on to cinematography. For cinematography, we have Dune, Nightmare Alley, The Power of the Dog, The Tragedy of Macbeth, and West Side Story. Interesting to see Tragedy of Macbeth here, since it kind of got shafted in a lot of other categories, which I was okay with because I did not like Tragedy of Macbeth nearly as much as other people. But a lot of other people were like, Tragedy of Macbeth, one of the best movies of the year. I was not one of them. But in terms of cinematography, this is one that's kind of tough because I like the cinematography in all of these movies. I think all these movies have great cinematography, and sure. I think that in some cases it's more of a process of elimination at some point. And I'm a little undecided, to be totally honest with you, because I don't want to give it a Tragedy of Macbeth because as much as I love the cinematography in it, I don't love the movie. So I kind of like, Power of the Dog, I think Campion did it slightly better in The Piano. Nightmare Alley, I just think it's great cinematography, but I don't love the movie. So it's kind of between Dune and West Side Story, which I like West Side Story more than Dune. And Dune, I don't know. I'm kind of torn on this one. I kind of want to give it to West Side Story because, I mean, he's taking an original film and I just think like adding so much to it without making it like it doesn't lose the spirit of the original, but it's also its own thing. Am I going to give it to West Side Story? Will Ashton, help me out.
Well, I was going to say, I think the weakest is probably Nightmare Alley, but everything else I think is effective. Like it'd probably go that, then Power of the Dog, then Dune, then 1 and 2 bounce between either Tragedy, Macbeth, and West Side Story. And the funny thing is that I think these nominees are in sync with production design, which I assume we're going to do after this.
Yes.
Even though it's not the same people obviously being nominated, I think those are in sync with one another. Just the look of the film complements the production design and vice versa. So I'm going to go for this one. I'm going to say West Side Story. And then I'm going to jump ahead and say for production design, I'm going to give it the Tragedy of Macbeth.
So that's very interesting. I'll stick to my guns then. And I'll say West Side Story. So our fourth time agreeing.
Yeah.
For production design, so you're picking Tragedy of Macbeth. Mm-hmm. And for this is the one that I kind of want to give it to Dune. Because I think with Dune, I think that it's kind of the same argument I've had for makeup and hairstyling and for costumes. And, I just think that when it comes to the effects, I mean, this is why I think, and the visual effects, this is why I just think that Dune is going to sweep the technicals quite a bit, because I just think it really is like punching above its weight. So I guess we'll go from there.
Like I said, I feel like the cinematography is what really, I think, justifies retelling West Side Story again, because it modernizes it, but also really just enriches the text. And like that opening shot of West Side Story where you see the gentrification, you see, New York as it once was being demolished, and like basically the futility of what these two, young gangs fighting for is so futile, but also you can see the meaning of why they're doing it. Also, obviously, the cinematography in the auditorium scene where you just kind of zoom into
That's
it.
Incredible.
The puddle scene where you see the stars. It just like, I think so much on that cinematography, and just like, man, what just a gorgeously filmed. And obviously, that's Spielberg's longtime DP, has proven himself time and time again. I don't know how you pronounce his name exactly, but I think he is, accomplished cinematographer, one of the best for a reason. And I just think back on how that cinematography really enriches and validates that movie in so many ways, and I have to give it to that film. But as far as Tragedy of Macbeth, and I think the cinematography in that film is near flawless, I think when I think back on the film, I think about how sparse and yet stark the production design is, and how you know, it really comes alive with that crisp black and white cinematography. But it's just that the way that the production is really validated, I think, by how the sets, which, like I said, they have a starkness, they have a kind of sparseness to them, but they add and complement the text in so many distinct and visually arresting ways. And I just think that production really pops because of that. And so I got to give that to that one.
All right. Very fair arguments across the board. So for cinematography, we both give it to West Side Story. For production design, I give it to Dune, and Will gives it to The Tragedy of Macbeth. All right. We have one last short subject, and we're kind of getting into the final stage here. We're getting into some of the biggest categories. But let's finish out the arguably smaller ones with documentary short subjects. And yeah, this is yet again one that I'm abstaining from because I did not see these. But they include Audible, Lead Me Home, The Queen of Basketball, 3 Songs for Benazir, and When We Were Bullies. When We Were Bullies, I think that's the autobiography of Will Ashton, which I find dishonest because like when we were bullies, more like while I am a bully. While I am a cyber bully, actually, is what I would probably name it. Are you okay, Will? You look pretty mad.
Jeez Louise. I like that you're delaying this one. I'll bet I don't think I agree with the way you're doing so, because I feel like I don't really have a horse in this race. Like, I feel like none of these really pop for me in a way that I was like, yeah, that's got to be the one. Like last year, I forget the name of the short film, but that there was so clearly like a short film last year where I was like, that's like the pick. Like easily, that's like one of the best films, no matter the category, that was being nominated last year. And with this one, I think all the shorts are pretty good. I just don't feel like there's like an outstanding standout in the same way. I think I'll give it to 3 Songs for Benazir. That's the one I saw most recently. And I feel like that one really accomplishes telling a story in a short form way. I feel like with Audible and Lead Me Home, which are also 2 other Netflix productions, they find themselves in this weird position where they're like 40-something minute shorts. I think actually Audible is like 38 minutes, but they're in that weird position where it's like they're either like a very long short or a very short feature, and it feels like they probably just should have picked one or the other. I just don't think it quite finds that balance. If this is a short category of justifying that, I think When We're Bullies is thematically interesting, though it falls short, I think, towards the end, because there's a clear, without giving away too much about it, there's a clear emotional catharsis moment that I feel like the filmmaker thought was going to be a lot bigger, and he didn't get the reaction he quite wanted from his subject, so he had to kind of scramble to make an ending, and you can kind of feel that. And also there's like a moral aspect to that short film that feels a little questionable. And I think, you know, Queen of Basketball, solid, lovely short film, definitely gives a pivotal figure in women's basketball her due, though I don't feel like I walk away being like, that's an Oscar-winning short film. I'm like, yeah, it's a really solid, lovely short film from the New York Times. But 3 Songs Benazir, you know, it accomplishes what I think it needs to do in 22 minutes. It's thoughtful. It really gets us into this Afghanistan perspective in a really thoughtful and delicate way. And I think it results in a very impactful, but also very enriched short film. So I think if I have to give it to one of these, I'm going to give it to that one.
All right. So 3 Songs for Benazir is Will's pick for documentary short subjects. All right. So we only have 3 categories left before we enter the big 5. And so we're going to do the writing ones next. So we have adapted screenplay and original screenplay. Let's start with adapted. With adapted, the nominees include CODA, Drive My Car, Dune, The Lost Daughter, The Power of the Dog. And for this one, I think these are all at least good movies. And I think that I think that Power of the Dog is one of the most impressive of these from an adaptation standpoint. I have the book, and I can tell like this material is really strong, and Campion did a great job adapting it. But I think Drive My Car is for me the standout. I think Drive My Car. I haven't even read the source material, but I just get such a sense of not just adapting the original work, but also adapting Uncle Vanya in its own way, in such a creative way, that I think Drive My Car is just the winner here. I think that it should absolutely win. I don't know if it will, but yeah, Drive My Car is the winner for me. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think CODA is pretty easily the weakest of the nominees here.
I have to agree. And I don't dislike the movie.
I like it fine. I mean, we'll talk about that more in a bit, but sure. I think the other 4 nominees are super well accomplished. And I mean, like, I've only read Dune of the 4 source materials, but I have said a lot about how I think Dune is really incredible feat as far as adapting a book that was often deemed unadaptable.
But here's the thing, it's only part 1.
That's what I was going to say, is I feel like it is really accomplished, but I feel like you have to kind of wait for that second one to really admire the scope of it. I think Lost Daughter and Power of the Dog are really effective, and I think, you know, if I were to win, I'd certainly say it's understandable. But like you said, when I think of Drive My Car, which is, as you mentioned, based on a short story before this, and I think about how that film not only takes that text and adapts it in a way that's meaningful, but expands upon it and justifies itself beyond the text while not devaluing that short film or short story to begin with, I think is such an accomplished feat of adaptation, and it just proves, you know, what a great piece of storytelling that is, while also respecting the art of storytelling in general. So I gotta say, Drive My Car is probably my pick as well. All
right, yeah, I think we're in total agreement then. 5th time. So far 5 categories we've agreed, and Drive My Car is the clear winner here. All right, then let's get into writing original screenplay. So these nominees include Belfast, Don't Look Up, King Richard, Licorice Pizza, The Worst Person in the World. Now, I know for sure that Belfast is not going to be... Belfast and Don't Look Up aren't going to come anywhere near your picks, and mine neither. I don't think... Yeah, these screenplays... No. But for me, I think King Richard is a good screenplay, but I think Licorice Pizza and The Worst Person in the World are masterful screenplays. It comes down between those two, and I've gone back and forth quite a bit on this because I want to give it to Licorice Pizza. I think Licorice Pizza is an incredibly well-written film, and I love the concept. I love the originality of it, and I really love The Worst Person in the World. But when I think about between these two movies, Worst Person in the World, I don't think the writing is exactly what I love the most about that movie. I think that one's more about, I think, the performances and sort of just the whole general look of the film and the presentation. I kind of wish Bergman Island had been put in this, honestly. But to that end, Licorice Pizza, I got to give it to that one. I just think that movie is just such a beautiful surprise of a film in every way. P.T. Anderson, he just he did it again, and I get it because like there are certain aspects of Licorice Pizza that are pretty troublesome, and it's certainly not a perfect film in terms of its writing. The way it dives into some like the Asian stereotypes, and then also the age gap. I don't think is as effectively handled as it could have been, because clearly it rubbed people the wrong way so much that it created a whole controversy around the film that prevented people from really engaging with it. So there are those aspects, but I still got to go with my heart on this one. It's Licorice Pizza.
That is fascinating. Yeah, because to state what you said before, basically, Belfast, mediocre script. Don't Look Up, garbage script. And the fact that Don't Look Up is probably going to win is just infuriating. Whatever.
People love that movie, man. People love it.
But that screenplay is just, as a satire, as a movie, even as a piece of storytelling, just the screenplay of that is just pure baloney. I think the screenplay for King Richard is pretty good. I agree that, I think it bounces well, and I think it does give a good showcase for the actors. I don't think it deserves an Oscar necessarily, but I think it's fine. I don't think I would have picked that nomination over several others, but
that's the thing. It's like when you see it next to Belfast and Don't Look Up, it's hard not to be just
sure. Yeah. It's at least understandable, that one. Yeah. Belfast and Don't Look Up are just confounding nominations for the screenplays. But yeah, going off of what you said already, basically it is between Licorice Pizza and Worst Person in the World for me. And as much as I love Licorice Pizza and I love PTA, I really am hoping PTA wins the award. I don't think he will, but I would love if he got, basically his first Oscar for Licorice Pizza. When I think back on those films, when I think back on the screenplays of them, I think I'm more impressed with what Worst Person in the World pulls off. When I think back on Licorice Pizza, I think it is the performances and the direction and the set and the
so we're the other way around. Interesting.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
I think it's the attention to time and place that really stands out to me. I think the screenplay, it's intentionally pretty laissez-faire, and I think people don't give that enough credit. But I think in terms of structuring the story, I think Worst Person in the World, not only as its own piece of work, but as a continuum of the Oslo trilogy, is a really outstanding thing. And not only the fact that it's able to show so much depth of time in a way that is not only feels like you're living through a lifetime, but also doesn't feel like it weighs or bags itself down, is really accomplished. And I just think there's so many moments in that where I think of the dialogue is so powerful, especially as we would probably agree, the scene towards the end where that like second to last like kind of confrontation that is so like true to life, but also just feels so poignant and powerful. So I got to give it to Worst Person in the World. As much as I love PTA, and I'd be, like I said, totally through the roof happy if he won. I think if I were voting, I'd have to give it to Worst Person in the World.
Love that honesty, you know? And I think at a certain point we end up having to split hairs just to choose because it's picking between such two really great scripts. So well said on your part. All right, so my pick is Licorice Pizza for writing original screenplay, and your pick is The Worst Person in the World. It's time for one more before we get to the big five, and that's international feature film. And this is another one this one's tough. You know, I think 3 really good ones here, 2 that I haven't seen. I think there's only 1 here that you haven't seen. So the nominees for international feature film are Drive My Car, Flea, The Hand of God, Lunana, A Yak in the Classroom, and The Worst Person in the World. For me, it's quite easily down between Drive My Car, Flea, and The Worst Person in the World. They're the ones that I saw. And
but John, there's a yak in the classroom.
That's true. I can't even believe
How can you ignore that?
Well, and hey, look, this is tough because I think all 3 of these movies were like, I think in my top 10 of the year or top 15. I think they're all excellent. And I think
if you see that yak.
I have to, pick. I'm surprised The Hero didn't make it here. I didn't see that one, but I thought it had some momentum, but alas.
It did, yeah. That's why people were shocked.
That Yak in the Classroom. Yacked it all up.
Yeah. I mean, I know you don't watch The Simpsons, but have you seen that meme where people are just like, a hero has heart and depth, but Yak in the Classroom has yak in the classroom. Yeah. So, I mean, yeah.
As much as I really liked Flea, again, I think Flea is quite good, but I think I have to choose, right? So then it becomes between Drive My Car and The Worst Person in the World, and this is where I stumble. I really don't know which to pick here. These are 2 of my favorite films of the whole year, and I love them for totally different reasons. I'm leaning toward Worst Person in the World. My pen is above the boxes. I don't know what to do. Will, help me out.
I'm also going to pick Worst Person in the World. And I am torn too, because I keep going back and forth. Like, well, Drive My Car. But, I mean, like I said, like, I think, not only do I prefer Worst Person in the World a little bit more, but I just think not only if I'm going to give this to that film, but to the Oslo trilogy in general, I think it really stands out. And like I said, I think, I think Drive My Car, remind me the name of the director. I apologize if
Ryusuke Hamaguchi.
Ryusuke Hamaguchi. I think he has a great career ahead of him. Not to say that, Joachim Trier doesn't, but I think, he's kind of, through himself, I think, in several other films already. I think we're still seeing some of the best work to come from, rhyme one more time how I pronounce that.
Ryusuke Hamaguchi.
Ryusuke Hamaguchi. I think, he still has so much great work to come. So I think I'm going to give it to Worst Person in the World. And though in addition to what you say, I also really did like Hand of God, but I don't think that's my favorite film from that guy either. So, I mean, I think that's a solid film. I definitely think it deserves to be nominated. I like Flea a good bit. I don't think I'd give it an Oscar either. So I'm going to give it to Worst Person in the World.
I was going to say, is like, maybe I'll decide by like, which movie do I want to rewatch the most? And that's hard because I want to rewatch both of them. But I guess that's going to come down. I think it's emotional at this point. And I think I have a slightly stronger emotional connection to Drive My Car. That's a movie that I think about a lot. That's a movie that I think about when I'm driving. Like, that's a movie that kind of had an impact on me, an effect on me that The Worst Person did as well, but in just a different way. It's a movie when I remember back on it, like things come flooding back. But Drive My Car, I can't resist thinking about, if that makes sense. So I'm going to say that's the one.
But I'm flipped. Like, I feel the same way, but I feel like Worst Person in the World. That's the beauty of cinema. Yeah, I feel like Worst Person in the World is what I keep thinking about more and more. Even though I do think a lot about Drive My Car, to be clear.
Yeah, you're just like, but I'm the worst person in the world. No, you're not, Will Ashton. Gotta get that attitude out of here.
You call me a cyberbully, the worst person in the world?
I'm saying you considered yourself. Anyway, let's go into the big 5. We have the leading actor categories. We have best director, and then we'll finish out with best picture, as we are wont to do. Let's start with
actor.
I just said we're going to do the lead actors.
Sorry, my bad. I didn't hear that. Sorry.
It tuned me out. Okay, well, I was literally about to say we're going to start with actor in a leading role. Here are the nominees. We have Javier Bardem for Being the Ricardos. We have Benedict Cumberbatch for The Power of the Dog. Andrew Garfield for Tick, Tick, Boom. Will Smith for King Richard. and Denzel Washington for The Tragedy of Macbeth. This one for me is between Will Smith and Benedict Cumberbatch, but it's Will Smith. I think that performance is much better in my opinion. I think that it's stronger, and Cumberbatch comes close, but I just don't think that it's nearly as lasting and as momentous for the actor himself. I think Will Smith has worked really hard for this. I think that it's a great performance, and we already talked about the Ingenue Ellis component of it, and I just think he carries the movie and he makes it as good as it is. And I like King Richard more as a movie anyway, so I'm going to give it to Will Smith here. What about you?
I am torn between two, but not the same two. I'm torn between, well, the same in that Benedict Cumberbatch, but I'm between him and Denzel Washington. And I know I'm a little bit more favorable on Tragedy of Macbeth than you are, but I would agree that I think Tragedy of Macbeth isn't his defining work. I think it's a very good performance, but I don't think it's the one that's like he's going to be remembered for per se. I think Will Smith, I mean, certainly good in King Richard, though I feel like that's such a showy, kind of bombastic performance, sometimes deliberately, sometimes not. I just don't think it really deserves an Oscar, unfortunately. But I think it's pretty easy for me to say that Benedict Cumberbatch deserves the Oscar for Power of the Dog, not only for how subversive that performance is, but how I feel like it really rewards the viewer the more you watch it, or the more times you watch it, just because it's so intricate and so deliberate in how it's being portrayed, and all the ways that can feel calculated are also so adding to the character and to the performance as well. So I think that's such a stunning and surprising performance, and I'm going to give it to him.
Yeah, I certainly do not disagree with your analysis of Benedict Cumberbatch in that movie. I think you're spot on. Yeah, I just disagree about Will Smith. I think that's it is a showy performance, but I think it has a lot of heart. And I think it's one of those, well, the thing that I love about it is that it's one of those performances that he is the center of attention, but he's actively like lifting up the other actors around him. I think that the two young actors who play his daughters, the Williams sisters, I think Ingenue Ellis, sure, like they don't fall into his shadow. He doesn't overpower them. He leaves room for them while still being himself. And I think that is the mark of a really great lead actor. I think Power of the Dog kind of does the same thing. I think Cumberbatch is doing the same thing with Cody Smith-McPhee and Kirsten Dunst and Jesse Plemons. I think that it's an impacting performance. So I think that's totally respectable. Denzel, sure. Yeah, I just don't think that's a very good performance at all. It's weird. I'm the minority on that. I think that people loved him and Frances McDormand and Tragedy of Macbeth. I thought those performances were kind of sleepy, and I just outside of like one or two scenes with Denzel, I was like, nah, this is not the Denzel performance that I think deserves an Oscar. I think he deserved it many other times before, sure, including Fences. But yeah, I
don't know. I'm actually not as keen on the Fences performance. I think that one. I think that's a great performance. I think that one is hurt by him directing himself. I feel like he doesn't really rein himself in that performance too well.
I like it when he did. I like Denzel without being reined in. I gotta be honest.
I mean, I think for me, like his best performance is probably Malcolm X. I think that's just such a powerhouse performance. And he should have won that year, though. I guess the Academy had to give it to Al Pacino for Sensible Woman. But oh well,
ridiculous.
But anyway, yeah. I mean, obviously, we could go on and on about how great Denzel Washington is in general, and I could go on about how I love him in Tragedy of Macbeth. All I'll just say is, like, you mean, some people just can't appreciate Denzel Washington giving a cool soliloquy and just stabbing a man in the neck. You mean, like, what?
Well, that actually was one of the scenes I like, so I'll give that to you.
That's a great scene, great performance. If you can't appreciate it, that's not my fault.
Yeah, you can't help me there. All right, let's do actress in a leading role. This is a big one. This is one that I think a lot of people have some eyes on, because it's a mix. We have good performances here. We have, I would say, one great performance, and we have one that I just do not think works at all. But I think you and I might disagree on a little bit on this, right? So Jessica Chastain for the Eyes of Tammy Faye. I love this performance, but it's not my pick. But I know we disagree quite a bit on that one. Olivia Colman for The Lost Daughter, I think, is a good performance. I think it's a good movie, and I think Colman is really good in it. Penelope Cruz for Parallel Mothers. I also really like this performance. Yes, Nicole Kidman for Being the Ricardos.
What's going on?
Whatever. What? Yeah. You know what?
Nicole Kidman, great actress in general. Yeah. That performance, not so much.
That performance, I just like. Have you met Lucille? Have you ever watched Lucille Ball? Like, I don't know. There was just something very, like, I don't know. We talked about Being the Ricardos, and it's not a movie I dislike all that much, but certainly like her and Barnum like are not I think the acting is, I think, one of the weaker things about that movie, but
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, this is a real with Nicole Kidman and with Jessica Chastain. I think it just comes down to the direction for both those. For me, I just feel like you said with being the Ricardos, I just don't think Aaron Sorkin really appreciates or cares why people like and revere I Love Lucy or why they love Lucille Ball. He kind of turns her into a caricature. And I feel like that performance doesn't really highlight what people love about Lucille Ball. And she just feels miscast in general, unfortunately. And I feel like with Eyes of Tammy Faye, and this is where I guess we disagree. I didn't
finish the nominees. We have one more.
Oh, sorry.
Kristen Stewart for Spencer. Sure. Which I think is like, that's it. But, go ahead.
So that's your pick, Kristen Stewart?
Oh, yeah, easily.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'll just say with Jessica Chastain, since I was kind of running into this, I think it's the type of performance I admire the energy for it. I just think it's not the right project. Someone pointed out on Twitter that she would excel with that type of performance in a Dan McBride project, and I have to 100% agree. Like, I feel like if she brought that energy to like Righteous Gemstones, I feel like I'd be 100% like give that woman an Emmy. But in this movie, I still walk away just not really knowing exactly what Michael Showalter wanted to do or say with that story or that character. And I think we disagree on that, and that's fine. But
yeah, refer to our episode about it. I think we had a good convo.
Sure. Yeah, we had a good convo. I mean, obviously, you have a lot more of a personal history with the people involved, so I don't want to take that away from you. But I don't know.
Yeah,
I just
give
don't,
it back.
Sure. I don't know. I just don't really walk away knowing what exactly to make of that movie. But I mean, I really like Olivia Colman's performance in The Lost Ark. I like Penelope Cruz too, but I don't know if I'd give her an Oscar for it, though she might win, and I'd be happy if she did. I really like Olivia Colman's performance. I really like Kristen Stewart's performance, but I think I'm going to have to agree with you and give it to Kristen Stewart, only because I feel like not only is that a great performance and great showcase for her, but Olivia Colman, as good as she is in Lost Daughter, she's, a recent winner. She won for The Favorite, a great performance as well.
That's true.
I think she's going to be nominated several more times. I don't know what is in store for Kristen Stewart in the future, and I think it would be nice to spread the love a little bit and give it to her, and give it to a performance that I think is really outstanding, and to finally validate like a decade or so of really great performances that tend to get diminished by people being like, yeah, but she's from Twilight, and
it's
all
like,
this. Yeah,
it's now mainstreaming that validation, because we've known for years and years now that she's not just Twilight. She has been doing excellent work. Yeah. Same thing with Robert Pattinson, and I think that I hope brings that like validation out to like the rest of like the movie going audiences who aren't as into like the indie scene. Sure.
Yeah.
And also, can I say I'm really glad that Penelope Cruz got nominated over Lady Gaga in House of Gucci. Thank God.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with Lady Gaga on that, but I think I would agree that Penelope Cruz gives a better performance. But I would say that, I mean, in terms of like which actress winning this Oscar would probably be the best for their career, I'd have to say Kristen Stewart. I think if Olivia Colman won again, everyone would just be like, yes. So we all agree again that Olivia Colman is great. If Kristen Stewart won for this, people would be like, okay, now we're finally getting some great, more, even better performances from Kristen Stewart, more opportunities. So I'm going to give it to Kristen Stewart as well.
Yeah, I think Kristen Stewart, what she's doing in Spencer is remarkable. I said it, like, I thought this movie should have been nominated for Best Picture, and I just think it's such a well-done film. And I think Kristen Stewart is so much of that. She's bringing a dimension to Princess Diana that a lot of people, I think sort of like undercut or sort of like overlooked, I suppose. And it's something that I think is really hard to do, of like bringing that empathy and warmth and humanity to somebody who was over scrutinized by the media, and by centering in on this like moment in time and just bringing so much attention to it. And I just think it's such a deliberate choice for her to not mimic Princess Diana, but to mimic the spirit of that real person, the tragedy of that person, while also bringing her forth as somebody that lived a life, and went through all these hardships that people don't take seriously, or people don't validate, to say that word again. So yeah, I think it's excellent. And I think anytime an American takes on like a British, personality like that, especially someone so iconic, it's quite an achievement that she's able to do it so well, and it's obviously like we see so many British actors, UK actors able to do Americans, performances, and like nobody bats an eye, like Benedict Cumberbatch for Power of the Dog. When Americans do it, the other way around, it's tough. Sometimes the accent just isn't there. So I think that's another reason I think Kristen Stewart deserves a feather in her cap. Yeah,
I mean, I think that's one of the bigger takeaways for me leading up to the film, and also following the film's release, that the fact that she had no real controversy about playing a British icon such as Princess Diana. I mean, as often as the word icon is used, I mean, I feel that's totally appropriate for Princess Diana. And the fact that no one was like, oh, an American playing Princess Diana because it's Kristen Stewart. And I mean, she's proven herself, I think, time and time again. And yeah, I think that's only another feather in her cap in this performance. All
right. Well, that is the 6th category that we have agreed on the winner. So that's interesting. And I think that's out of 20 so far, I want to say, because we only have 2 categories left. I think there are 22 categories. I could be wrong about that, but I'd have to do a count. But okay, we have 2 to go before we finish out of the big 5. And the next one here is directing. And, you know, we've mentioned it on the show before. Directing tends to predict the best picture. Not all the time, you know, maybe not even most of the time. Might only be half the time at this point, because there have been a lot of variances over the last few years where these categories have been different.
Category is split a lot more of late.
It has, yeah. I think starting with Cuarón getting Roma and then Green Book winning was one of the first times people were like, wait, what? You know.
What about On Lee winning for Life of Pi, and then
going even further back, sure, but yeah, it tends to trend. It's like more of an exception. But then I think it started with Cuarón, and then it started to be like, wait, you know, it started changing more and more. Although Parasite, I think, won both, if I'm not mistaken.
That is true. And also last year, Nomadland won director.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, so maybe there isn't as much of a trend, but yeah, I guess maybe going before that.
Yeah,
but let's say what our winners are. Who cares about what the Oscar Academy has to say? They're not in on this. This is us. This is just us guys.
I mean, if the trend that has been circling is true, this is going to almost certainly be a case of director winning and
I do think that. Yeah,
because I mean, if CODA wins, and that it's not nominated for best director, so I mean, it would have to almost certainly not be, you know,
right.
A double,
yeah. Yeah, and to what you're saying, we can just get that out of the way. And I think the odds-on favorite to win right now, Jane Campion for The Power of the Dog for Best Director, and then Power of the Dog for Best Picture. It's been the front runner basically since TIFF, right up there.
I mean,
with
if that happens,
Belfast.
Yeah. I mean, it's possible. I mean, I don't know. It does seem like a little bit more open that it's between Power of the Dog and CODA at this point.
We'll get to that.
Yeah, sure.
Let's stick to director for now, because obviously we have plenty to say there. But for director, we have Kenneth Branagh for Belfast, who's been one of the front runners since the film premiered. And then we have Ryusuke Hamaguchi for Drive My Car, Paul Thomas Anderson for Licorice Pizza, Jane Campion for The Power of the Dog, and Steven Spielberg for West Side Story. And I got to say, these across the board, I think with the exception of Kenneth Branagh, I think these are all really great directing showcases. I think Branagh is okay in Belfast. Obviously, I like that movie a little bit more than you do, but I certainly don't think it's at the same level as the rest of these.
Yeah, I mean, we got 4, powerful pieces of direction, and then we got Kenneth Branagh.
And you can see in the rest of our picks, like these movies have, across the board have gotten big prizes from the two of us. I think the only thing Belfast has gotten from either of us was me giving to Karen Hides. And even that has an asterisk.
I mean, I know you're not as favorable on Dune, but I feel like the fact that Kenneth Branagh got nominated over Denis Villeneuve is just confounding to me.
I think Denis Villeneuve is one of our true greats in the making, one of our true master directors at this point. I think unquestionable. And he's been recognized before, at least nominated before, so I certainly do not discount what he's going to be doing in the future. But yeah, if I have to pick here, I think that I got to go with Paul Thomas Anderson for Licorice Pizza. I think it's the better movie. I think as director, he just absolutely nailed it. It's tough because I kind of mentioned some of the key shortcomings of the film before, and I could argue, maybe even though it's my personal favorite, did Ryusuke Hamaguchi deliver a more well-rounded film, one that doesn't have that same problematic territory? It's tough for me. It comes down to those two films, and it's close. It's super close, but I gotta stick with Paul Thomas Anderson. The guy has made some of the best films of the 21st century, and the fact that he hasn't won this award, despite that, is egregious. And this might be a little bit more of me, sort of because this is one of his best films. I think that I shouldn't split hairs here and give him a wash, I suppose. So I'm going to go with Paul Thomas Anderson. I think he deserves it. I think it's a long time coming, and Licorice Pizza deserves the award, in my opinion. But what about you, Will Ashton? Tell me why did you end up going with Kenneth Branagh? I
mean, I'm 100% with you. I think it's going to be PTA for me, and I was definitely between Hamaguchi as well and Jane Campion I considered, and Spielberg. I mean, certainly doing some of his most inspired direction to date. And I mean, I don't want to discount any of those accomplishments, but PTA, as you mentioned, is just, been on such an incredible role for his entire career. And the fact that the Academy hasn't recognized that is horribly egregious. And I think he is finally due to get an Oscar. So, I'm going to give it to him for not only this film, which I think is my favorite of the year, but also for his direction, which I think is, once again, just stellar.
That's good. Sounds good. So that's 7 categories that we have agreed on out of, and I just did the count, 23. There are 23 categories this year. We already mentioned not all these will air. I think 8 of them won't on the broadcast. Ridiculous. And 7 out of 23 so far, could be 8 if we agree on Best Picture. We'll find out in a moment. But Paul Thomas Anderson for Licorice Pizza, Best Director. And I have a feeling this could be our 8th because now we're in Best Picture, and it is one of those things where I think that those categories tend to overlap a little bit there. But here are the nominees. We have Belfast, CODA, Don't Look Up, Drive My Car, Dune, King Richard, Licorice Pizza, Nightmare Alley, Power of the Dog, West Side Story. And I think this is the one where it's, look, Licorice Pizza is my second favorite film of the whole year, right under Red Rocket. Red Rocket didn't get a single nomination this year, which I'm, a little bummed about, but what are you going to do? But that's why my heart has been going to Licorice Pizza in almost every category I can. I'm sad, that it didn't get anything for acting. I'm not super surprised or anything, but, and I know people were sort of like, well, Bradley Cooper for Best Supporting, no.
I mean, that would have been my pick for supporting if he was nominated, but
I wouldn't have. If I like that performance, but it's, we don't have to get into that, I guess. But there has been some buzz, I mentioned this earlier, right? Where Belfast and Power of the Dog has sort of been the Oscar favorites to win, right? And people were sort of debating, well, what's the villain this year? Is it Belfast? Some people are sort of like, yeah, sure, it's Belfast. But now the villain is kind of trending toward CODA. There was a little bit of heat around well, would it be Don't Look Up? Is it going to win everything? What about Being the Ricardos? And then as the awards started to pour out from the BAFTAs and the SAGs and all of that, it's actually, no, CODA has way more momentum than I think people previously assumed. And there are some people who think it could go to CODA. It won a lot of, it won some ensembles, it won some best pictures from some critics groups, and it's been doing super well. It would be kind of a massive upset because it would defy a lot of Oscar trends. It premiered at Sundance. It would be the first time Apple would win. It is a movie that's, I think in terms of what kind of movie it is, the crowd pleasing, it's certainly not an upset in that respect. It is the kind of movie that, yeah, sure, that would win Best Picture because, the Academy tends to go for kind of safe crowd pleasing movies. And I like CODA quite a bit, but not one of the best films here. But the fact that it didn't premiere at TIFF, it didn't do Telluride, it did, there are all of these indicators that usually predict these things, but we are in a new era. Anything's possible. So I am curious if CODA is going to win, but I think Power of the Dog is the one that will probably win. I think it has a very, very strong chance. But I guess we've got to be ready for anything. The rest of these films, they're kind of in the conversation, but I don't think any of them have a strong enough coalition to overpower. I think Power of the Dog or CODA or arguably Belfast. So that might still be in the mix too. I'm not sure, but I got to go Licorice Pizza. It's my second favorite movie of the year. Of course, I would put it for Best Picture. But what about you, Will?
Yeah, I mean, if CODA wins Best Picture, I think it's going to be another scenario sort of similar to Kurt Locker, where it's a film that premiered at the film festival, didn't really get a lot of buzz, kind of came out quietly over the summer, and then all of a sudden won Best Picture. And I feel like it would probably be worse for that movie than it was for Hurt Locker, because also both those are women-directed films. But it would be worse, I think, for CODA, because I think too many people would set too many expectations because they haven't really heard about this film much. Then all of a sudden it wins Best Picture and they watch it and they're like, oh, wow, I haven't heard of this movie. Now it won Best Picture. It must be amazing. And you watch it. It's a lovely, sweet little movie, but just
if I can counterpoint, man, I have people have been watching it the last few weeks because of the buzz.
And people like it. It is a crowd pleaser.
Yeah, people are like, hey, this is a really good movie. How come I hadn't heard of it before? It went to Apple, I think, in the summer. And it scratches an itch for a certain type of audience.
I think, yeah, but I mean, it's not like a Green Book situation where I think that movie was horrendously hurt by winning Best Picture in terms of its legacy. I just think it's a movie where it's going to do more harm than good if it gets Best Picture, because I think people are going to set too high of expectations. And, you know, we came into it from the ground level. Like, we both saw it at Sundance. Like, we were among the first audiences, not to brag, just to be honest. Like, we were, you know, on the ground floor, and we saw it, and we were like, yeah, it's a sweet little movie. Yeah. Pretty good. Nice movie. And we thought it was one of the, I mean, I think even when it won the grand jury prize at Sundance, we were like,
that tracks.
I don't know about that.
I thought it made sense, but yeah, it wasn't like our first picks.
But yeah, what I meant was that, like, yeah, I mean, it makes sense, but it's like, I don't think I'd give it the grand jury prize. But then I felt like its Oscar or Best Picture nomination was just kind of like out of nowhere too. It was like, oh, well, we're still talking about CODA. All right, that's the power of Apple for you. And it would be funny, just if Apple, because Netflix is trying so hard.
Netflix, since Beast of No Nation in 2015, Netflix has tried every year. They put so much money into it. Between
that carrot,
Roma, Marriage Story.
Yeah.
What was the big one last year? I don't even remember now.
Well, let's see. Last year, I don't know if they had a big one. Did they? Oh, they had Mank.
Mank, that was the one. Yeah. And it didn't have nearly as much. They were expecting that to be the one. Every year, it's like, this will be it. This is it.
Yeah.
Irishman.
Well, certainly.
You know?
Yeah. Irishman and Roma were and like you said, Marriage Story were the ones where it's like they dangle that carrot, like, hey, maybe this will finally be it. Yoink. Yeah. And
it just doesn't happen. I mean, if Apple got it for like the first time, Apple really tried, just because
first time it's just like, hey, we're just, you know, just a humble little streaming service that, you know, just coming out here. Not that Apple's ever been humble in like 4 decades, but
I'm sure it rubbed Netflix's like crawl last year when they lost to Amazon, right? You know, but Amazon got, well, I guess Searchlight was technically for Nomadland, but Nomadland went to Amazon, and it was about Amazon in some respects. So I don't know.
But it was like half Searchlight, half Hulu, I guess, kind of like it. Yeah, Hulu was involved with the release of it, but it would be kind of funny, but also kind of sad, because I think of the front runners as far as like what's actually predicted to win, Belfast or CODA or Power of the Dog. Power of the Dog is the better of those 3 films, but I would give it to Licorice Pizza in a heartbeat. I mean, as much as I really do like Drive My Car, I think for all the reasons you said, all the reasons we said, was Best Director, I just think it's finally PTA's time. He deserves to get some Oscar love, and I think, you know, Licorice Pizza was the film of last year for me, and I would be over the moon if he got Best Picture or Best Director or Best Screenplay. I don't think it's going to happen, unfortunately, but I mean, he is well overdue to get that recognition, and that would be my pick as well.
I gotta say, it's not a bad lineup this year. I know you don't like Belfast, but I like a lot of these movies here.
I mean, I like Belfast more and Don't Look Up.
I think Belfast and Don't Look Up. I don't hate either of those movies. I think that they're just kind of mediocre. I think Belfast is like slightly above mediocre. And the rest, like, I don't know. I don't hate them. That's the thing. And like, Don't Look Up is that other Netflix movie. I think they kind of put hopes in.
I think we're totally in line on Belfast and Don't Look Up. I'm just a little bit more vocal about how disgruntled I am about that. I think you're just more passive, like, Belfast.
What are you going to do?
It's Irish.
I think I responded to certain aspects of it that maybe you didn't. I don't know. But I mean, I liked King Richard quite a bit. I liked West Side Story and Dune, and obviously like Drive My Car and Licorice Pizza. I'd say, Nightmare Alley. It's kind of in the same zone as those other 2. I think Nightmare Alley is a little bit better, but
I mean, I think we're pretty much in line, except we probably would flip Dune and King Richard in our respective lists.
Yeah, that's actually probably fair. Yeah, because I like King Richard more than Dune, not by a ton, but I think I like just different aspects of those movies in different ways. And I got to say, I think this is a pretty memorable year for Best Picture. Like, there are more films here that I find interesting than in previous years I have. So there you go. That's 8 categories out of 23 that Will and I agreed on. And I think 2 of them were Licorice Pizza. So that is interesting. It's been an interesting year. I don't know. I'd have to look at the tape or rewind the tape or whatever to see how often we agree on things when it comes to the Oscars, because I don't remember actually. Usually we agree on like animated. I think so, but I don't know. I'd have to look. Maybe I'm totally wrong about that.
That's our big disagreement, I guess, this year is on animated. So
I mean, hey, that was, I think 2021 was the year we argued about Mitchells versus Machines more than anything else.
I guess I don't even dislike that movie that much. It's just fine. I think it's fine middle movie.
Yeah. You have not been unkind. So I'll say that much.
Sure. Do you think you still think that's going to win animated feature?
I don't know. I think it's a crapshoot. I think it's honestly like Encanto could. I think it's between Encanto and Mitchells versus Machines. I don't think Luca. I don't think they're going to give it to the Pixar one this time.
No. Luca's in like dead last. I think even Raya has their chance. As far as like
I would say
chances of
Raya
winning,
and Flea are in last. I think it's between Encanto and Mitchell's and then Luca. But
I mean, Flea was also nominated for international feature and international feature and animated and what was the third one? I don't know. I just know that it was Luca. It seems to have some love at the Academy, at least from a nomination standpoint. So
that's what I thought. I mean, I thought Luca just had a stronger chance than I think Raya is probably dead last.
Yeah, I meant to say Flea. I might have said Luca instead of Flea. But
yeah, I mean, Flea is one of those things that like I can't predict. It's hard because I think with animated feature, there's a bias at the industry of like what movie wins that, and so I think that's hard to overcome. But yeah. I think Mitchell's versus the Machines. One of the reasons that it might have what it takes to beat out Encanto, which I think has more of the name recognition. It's more recent. I think that's what it's going to come down to. But Mitchell's had a really good marketing campaign. Like they just really came out and really put a lot of effort and buzz into that movie winning. And I think it's also really good, so I think it has a shot.
I think Encanto has more genuine buzz. Not that Mitchell's Machine doesn't, but I think that people, like even people who don't really love film, I think are seeing Encanto and just loving it. And I think it has a recency bias where I think, Mitchell's versus Machine came out in April, whatever, fairly close to the last Oscars. And I feel like people associate with that, and back then, and people see Encanto as a newer film and they see it more recently. So I don't know.
I would be fine with Encanto winning. I think it'd be really cool just because, it features a Latina cast, and it's sort of a different kind of story. It doesn't center around like the usual like cookie cutter American family. So there is that aspect to it. I'll give it that. Although I think Mitchell's versus Machines, I love that and I'd said this already. It has a little bit more, like not a ton of courage because it's not like that character is coded LGBT like the entire movie or anything. It's like at the very end, but I don't know, baby steps. That's all I'm asking for.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I feel like they could have done more for that. It feels a little hapdash to me that they kind of threw that at the end, but whatever.
It's something. It's like I'm settling for like, I'm settling a little bit here.
I think it's settling
compared to the others.
Sure.
But I mean, Luca, they basically wrote it out, and then
well, Luca, they wrote it down. Well, Flea, it's so prominent in the film,
right?
But granted, that's not for families. But I mean,
we don't have to get political, but certainly there is like this. There is a mood right now where it's just like this sort of thing is under attack right now in terms of like kids even from just Disney being aware that this stuff exists and that it's this villainy against like normalizing that, and so certainly. In kids' movies, I personally, like, I have a bit of a bias toward I just want this stuff to get better for folks. And then it's...
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I don't think Encanto really does that. I don't think it really tries to. I don't want to hate on Encanto for not, shoehorning that sort of thing in. But there is this sort of, like, attitude, I think, with Disney right now where they're, I don't know. This is something you and I can totally have a long conversation about, but I think we're out of time.
I was gonna say I gotta kind of get going, and I don't.
We gotta head to the real red carpet now.
Yeah. Anyway, here
are the statues. Good job, everybody. You did great. Will, you did great.
Yeah. Thank you.
Good job.
You did great as well.
Thanks. We'll be back.
Yeah.
We'll be back soon. We're going to talk about The Lost City pretty soon here on the show. Lots of other things coming up. We'll see what happens. But for now, we'll leave you here with I wonder what's going to happen with the Oscars. I'll be keeping up. I'll tune in after the ceremony ends. So I'll see what happens.
You could always just like turn Twitter off and tape the show.
I can experience it all fresh. Yeah, and I can live tweet it late. Like, whoa, can you guys believe this? Everyone's sleeping.
Unless you get mad at me and I'll just spoil all the winners before you see them.
That's true. Like that can happen. All right, we'll see you all in the next one from the Internet California. I am John Negroni.
And for Pennsylvania, I'm Will Ashton.
See you next time.